Hi, Jock. Welcome to the Sayana Society. Incredible honor hosting you. Incredible honor speaking with you. So, the first thing that I wanted to ask you is about your journey into the sports sciences, about your early fascination with anatomy and the sports sciences, your own journey in sport. Could you talk about that?
Oh, for sure. I'm really pleased to be on here. I know we've been trying to hook up for a long time. I think then I got COVID and then I had an operation. And I think we had Australian titles before that. So I'm sorry I've put you off for so long and really glad to be here. And any friend of Raise Your Money is a friend of mine. So, great to meet you finally. I was just always fascinated with sport, and I think every Indian on the planet, I loved cricket from a young age. It's a funny story, actually. I got up one night, I'd been put to bed by my parents, and I got up and my brother was still up, my older brother, and they were watching the Ashes in England. And this must have been, I don't know if it was 75 or, and my mum and dad said, yeah, you got to go back to bed. And I said, well, why's my brother up? And they said, oh, because he likes the cricket. And I said, yeah, I like the cricket. I didn't know anything about the cricket then, so they let me stay up. And so I think pretty much from then, my brother got me into cricket, and I was just fascinated with cricket and loved all sports growing up. And then, I was always interested in why someone was fitter, who could run faster, why can he bowl faster than him or me, and I was constantly looking at ways that I could get better. And I had a really good PE teacher, and he taught me a bit. He was an ex-rugby union player, and he was my rugby coach as well. So he sort of helped me a bit, but he didn't really know that much. He just told me what he used to do when he played rugby. And I was asking my brothers, and there was no internet or anything like that back in those days. So, I think it was in year 12, and I wasn't sure what to do after school. I was going to do PE teaching and my father, and I wasn't sure if it was my father or mother. They said, there's a new course we found. It's called sports science. And I just heard sport, and I went, yep, sure. What is it? And they said, we don't actually know, but it's to do with obviously the science of sport. And I started, and I struggled through school. I had to work really hard. And as soon as I started sports science, I just loved it. And there's finally people like me there that just love sport, love training for sport, love the idea. So I had, from my class, we had the Australian Wallabies strength and conditioner, which is our rugby union team. My mate Paul Watson, who I actually took to India with me, and Roger Money knows well. He ended up being strength and conditioner with the Australian Rugby League team, which is a massive sport over here. And we had, swim coaches, and John Quinn, who's over at the Olympics now. He was the head of Australian sprint team in the 2000 Olympics. So we had a really good class and lecturers, and my love of it was just enhanced. And it was very new in that area. I'd played rugby, I'd played cricket, and then one of my lecturers was a sprint coach, and he said, anyone wants to learn how to do sprinting, I'm going to try and make the Queensland team again. And I think 8 of us put up our hands, and then we basically, 2 of us had a personal sprint coach for the next 3 years, and I still speak to him today. And he got me into sprinting, so then I knew that was good for cricket, running faster. And one of my other lecturers was a distance running coach, so he got me really interested in the science and the techniques of distance running, which again, having a great aerobic system is fantastic for cricket. So I related it always back to my sports and the sports I loved. So that's pretty much how I got into it, and I still can't get enough of it.
Could you talk a little bit more about your education in the sports sciences and also about your early intellectual influences? Could you talk a bit more about that?
So the sports science, it was, as I say, it was very early days of sports science. It was in the mid-'80s, so that shows how old I am. In 1987, I went to a small college that was near my house, which is very rare. I went to school, it was an hour and a half away from my house. So, but it was part of New South Wales Uni. And it was associate diploma in sports coaching. And that was only 2 years. And I finished that, and then they brought in a degree, but you had to do a full 3 years again to be able to get the degree. So I went, oh, well. And so then I transferred over, okay, I've done the coaching side, let me do the sports science side. And a lot of the subjects, of course, crossed over. So I sort of, it's 5 years at uni, and then they brought in a dip ed the following year. So you could do you then were qualified to teach at schools or at universities. So I did that. So 6 years at university, but it was I didn't feel I'd learned enough after the first course, and it was still a young sort of industry. But what had happened in year 3 of our sports science degree, sports science was growing, strength and conditioning was growing in sport. Initially, you could only be a rugby league strength and conditioner and maybe make part-time money. You still had to work, and most of us were working in the gyms or with sporting teams, but not really getting anywhere. And the Cricket Academy, Rod Marsh had just taken over the Australian Cricket Academy, the great late Rod Marsh. And it wasn't till he passed a couple of years ago that I really reflected on how much he helped influence my early career. And the way he did it was, my mum or my dad, I can't remember which one, they wrote a letter to Rod and said, could Jock do his prac at the Cricket Academy? And, they didn't think that he'd back from him. He rang them and he said, oh, yeah, I see he plays grade cricket. He said, yeah, sure, he can come down. And so all my other university mates were going off into sports they weren't that interested in, but had the opportunity for them to go. So 3 went down to the Institute of Sport and they were just in the biomechanics department. They tell me they didn't see the light of day for 3 weeks. They were just digitising. And I got to go to the Cricket Academy for a couple of weeks, stay there. And the players that were there, the youngsters that were there was, Adam Gilchrist, Michael Kasprowicz, Stewie McGill. There was a whole bunch of them that ended up playing for Australia. And Rod just said, oh, you play cricket, mate, so you can bowl on them in the nets. You just join in and do whatever you... And then, we'd go to the gym, and then because they knew I did sports science, they're asking me, and even the coach in there was asking me, oh, what exercise would you do? And I did all the fitness stuff, and then Rod pulled me out of the distance test. They were doing testing. He goes, no, you're too fit. I'm not having you run against our boys. But he was really good. He said, Jock, anything in that filing cabinet over there, that was the last bloke's year. I'm starting off afresh. I don't want any of that. So whatever you don't want, I'm going to throw out. And it was all their fitness testing results, fitness protocols for cricket that was just going to go to waste. And so I said, you sure you don't want to keep this? Like, it's good stuff. And he said, no. And so I've still got that to this day. And then, I had McGrath's results, all these fitness results and some of the other stars. But what I really learned from that was that I wasn't out of my depth. I knew cricket really well. I played a lot of cricket. I knew sports science, and I knew running, and I knew weights and how that related to cricket. And I was taking my own cricket clubs. It was Sydney Union and then Sutherland, where McGrath and Steve Smith, Shane Watson are all from. And I was taking them for all the fitness and pre-season, even though I was a young guy. So it gave me a lot of confidence that I was on the right track, and that I knew one day there should be a job with the cricket team, the Australian cricket team, and I wanted to be the guy that was most prepared for that job. So, and I didn't, in those days, you didn't earn much money doing that. And you know what? I just said, I don't care about the money. I just know that is my passion, and that's what I like to do. And I don't care if I don't earn a lot of money. That's fine. I've never been one driven by money. It has to be something that motivates me and inspires me and stimulates me. And so that's how I sort of got into cricket. And along the way, I found out I loved running, I loved coaching runners, and I loved running myself. And so on the side of that, I coached a lot of runners and sprinters. And I think in the earliest athletes I got were these boxers. And they, one of them was in Sport for Australia, and they were amateurs. And they were the bouncers at a nightclub I used to work at. I was a barman. And they said, oh, we hear you're doing sports science. Do you know anything about running? And in my mind, I'm going, well, sounds like I know a lot more than you guys about running. And I was first year uni. And I go, yeah, I know heaps. And they said, good, can you take us running? Because we hate it and our coach wants us to do it. So I took them running, and I copped a lot of abuse. But these were grown, big, burly blokes. And they'd throw me in the ring and teach me how to box. I've got to say, they did look after me, but they... if I'd given them a particularly hard running session, they certainly let me know with a couple of punches. I had a lot of experience just because I was just so enthused by it. I did. And for the youngsters out there, I did so much work for free, but what I got from that was experience and connections and a step up the ladder. So I find the youngsters today really don't like doing anything for free, but, I got so much in return for doing that.
What does it take to be a strength and conditioning coach specializing in cricket? Could you talk about your journey in cricket?
Yeah, well, I was giving you a bit of the background there, but as I was going through uni, I said I worked in a bar at night to earn money, and I quickly learned that I don't want to be doing that. I want to be gaining knowledge, gaining experience while I'm at uni in the area that I'm studying. So, I started working in gyms, and I worked in a great one at Southern Leisure Centre, which had multiple athletes from different sports training in the gym that had no coaches, no programs, no nothing. And, one of them, went to the 2000 Olympics in the water polo as the Australian goalkeeper. She won a gold medal at the Olympics. So, I got to work with them from a very young age in my coaching. And so I was getting experience, and I asked my career club, as I say, out of school, I was still at school, and I started playing for Sydney Uni, and I asked them if I could take the pre-season training and the fitness, and I was banging my head against the brick wall for a lot of time where gym's not going to help cricket, weights won't help cricketers. And these were from very smart men who were doctors and lawyers telling me this. And I said, well, how is cricket the only athletic endeavour in the whole world that won't improve with the right resistance training? Like, oh, no, cricket's different. So they were the sort of battles I had early on. And I just kept getting experience. And then I got a young Stewie Clark. I ended up playing with this young kid called Stuart Clark. And he was only sort of 15 or 16 at the time. And he got a stress fracture early on. So I worked with him to help bring him back from that. And, I was playing in his team. And so I was playing cricket and learning what you needed to do, basically what is involved in the game of cricket. From chasing balls, how far do you have to chase balls in the outfield, how many? How many overs do you need to be able to bowl? How can we maintain your pace late in the day? And so I was constantly working in gyms. And then once I finished uni, I was very experienced. And so I was ready and very confident that I knew what I was doing. And because I'd been at uni 6 years, that's a long time to study, and you absorbed so much. But when you were working, using all those techniques you learn at uni, as you went, it made such a big difference, because a lot of my friends, they went off and did something else after uni because they hadn't worked in the area and they had no experience, so they couldn't get any jobs. And they also, as I said, there wasn't much money in the industry, so they didn't really chase that up. And then I sort of worked in rugby league because that was professional, and I worked with swimmers and some rugby union players, whilst always working with the cricketers, but most of that was still for free. And then finally, when a job came up in New South Wales, when jobs came into cricket, I was just really experienced, and I'd worked with a few of the players that were playing for them, as Stewie Clark, for example, and I'd worked with, Steve Rickson was the coach in New South Wales, so he was my first coach for New South Wales, but he was from my club, so he knew me and knew of what I did, and so I was just well positioned. And then I think the big thing, the question you asked was, what do you need? Well, if you want to be a cricket strength and conditioner, learn cricket, learn every aspect of cricket. That's priority number one. And then learn from sports science and from the cricket teams on TV. And, every time I went to a cricket game, I was watching what were they doing in warm-ups, what were they, doing for training. I see snippets on TV and I'd pick up exercises, combine that with my sports science, then I could work out, that should go in that phase of the program or whatever. So I think learn cricket, become exceptionally well qualified in sports science and strength and conditioning, because they're close hand in hand. You need to know both, and learn, start working with cricketers. They could be kids, they could be grade players, they could be, premier cricketers, or they could be first class cricketers. Find some to work with. And I think the biggest thing you have to do is, if you want to get as a strength and conditioner, high performance coach, whatever you want to call it, any sort of coach, if you want to get in there for the limelight, you're in the wrong position. You're a support staff, and it's every day, early morning. And I'll give you an example. I started this morning, my first session was in the Sandhills this morning at 7 o'clock. This is on a Saturday. And that went to about 8:30. I then had a relay baton changing session with one of my sprint teams. Then I went straight to altitude training. We had an altitude chamber where my elite runners we did a session, then I was straight to one soccer game, then another soccer game. And then, of course, I had to get back to watch the Olympic marathon today. But that's every day. That's Saturday. That's every day. And you can't be flat. You can't be tired. You've got to love it. If you don't love it and you're getting in for the wrong reasons or you're just getting in for the money, you won't last because it's hard work. I'm 56 and I'm still 7 days a week. Tomorrow morning, I'm running with one of my elite runners, and then we've got another altitude session. And you can say, well, why are you working on a Sunday? Because that's how you win. And that's, I want to give my athletes the best possible opportunity to win, to be their best. And sometimes it means, I had a meeting with a guy yesterday, a mate of mine, Steve, and he works with companies on building teams and what does it take. He goes, sometimes as a leader of these little squads and, I get stuck in the weeds that we're, helping out. And I said, mate, a good coach will get stuck in the weeds because you've got to do everything you can to make sure your team's successful. And if that means, getting up at 6 because one of the athletes can only train at that time because they've got to work or whatever, they can't make the afternoon session, that's what you do. So that's probably my advice to how you become good at what you do in our area.
With these conversations, what I've essentially been doing is having these topical deep dives. And when I was thinking of, what to speak with you, something that really struck me was fast bowling, because you've had the distinction of working with every Australian fast bowling great, minus maybe Dennis Lilly. And so my question to you about fast bowling is, there's a certain romance to fast bowling. You're rushing against the wind, hair flying back, and there's something really primal about being able to throw a ball really fast. I mean, what is the fascination with fast bowling? What gets kids so excited about fast bowling?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I talk about this a lot, and I didn't work with DK Lilly, the great, he's the godfather of Australian fast bowlers, world fast bowlers really. And
was he
learned a lot from him. Sorry?
Was he a fast bowling hero growing up?
Oh yeah, he was a hero to everyone in Australia. Like he was, he had the chains, he had the shirt unbuttoned almost to his waist, the hairy chest, the flowing locks. But to see him live running, he had, and what I did learn from him, I didn't work with him, but I learned so much because he was the first bowler that had a stress fracture, had to get an operation that actually came back and bowled. And we believe, like, there's not much research about it. There's 3 research papers in the whole of the world on cricket when I went to uni. And one of them, which was the one I learned the most from, was Dennis's rehab from getting a stress fracture to getting back to bowling and making back to the Australian team. And a lot of what was done then, would stack up really well today. And what he did, he went to a sprint coach as well to learn how to run properly. And so when he came back and he ran in with the beautiful technique and the beautiful run-up, he was amazing. And definitely all the fast bowlers, and because he was such a great coach as well, all the fast bowlers looked so much up to him. But I think what's the romanticism about it? Look, I played cricket and they scared the hell out of the fastest bowlers. Like, the fear factor there for me. I wasn't, I remember Ricky Ponting saying once, I've never been scared by a bowler. I said, I've been scared by every fast bowler I've ever faced. Because you're not just fearing for losing your wicket. If you don't pick that ball up, that ball can kill you, particularly in the old days when I first started playing, you didn't wear helmets. And you were considered soft if you actually put a helmet on. So, if you didn't see it or didn't get it right, I remember facing Wayne Cracker Holsworth, who was in my age group, and I faced him quite a few times growing up. And he had this, on his day, he was lightning. I'm not sure if he played a test. He went on an Ashes tour, but he played state cricket. And he was bowling to me on New Year's Day, and I swear I didn't see the first ball. And I survived that over, but I got out to the bowl up the other end, and I was actually relieved walking off because I thought, if that ball had been bowled at me that I didn't see, I was dead, And so I think that's, that fear factor. Everyone loves having that fast bowler on your team. And when we got a young Stewie Clark with us, and he was, he only played a couple of games in second grade, and he took he took something like 15 wickets in one game. And I'm just going, finally, I've got a fast bowler on my team. How good? And so, it's just exciting. And I even saw a video today on Instagram of Sean Tate bowling Mark Boucher. And Boucher was a very good batsman, and his feet didn't move, and he barely got his bat down. And it was an in-swinger, and it was like when Tatey was at his peak. And it was like, you could see the look on Boucher's face. It was like, oh, that was good. But, and I was there not working for Australia, but working for the host broadcaster, Channel 9, when Sean Tate bowled the fastest over ever and hit 160. And the crowd was just lifting, and he bowled the 160 ball, and all of a sudden the roof blew off the stadium. The noise was that big. And I saw him the next game, and I said, mate, that's the most exciting over in cricket I've ever seen. And they can talk about batsmen, sixes, whatever. I said, mate, the crowd went nuts. And the same with Brett. When I worked with Brett, and for a 2-year period, we worked on getting him to be able to bowl 160 at the World Cup. That was our goal. Just mine and Brett were the only ones that had thought about it. And he worked so hard. And in the semi-final, he bowled Marvin at a par 2 with this sizzling balls. I think it's still the fastest ball to ever take a wicket. I said to, I went down and final leg, and we just sort of low-fived each other, and I said, that's pretty cool, mate. And he won us the game with that. They were only chasing 212 in the semi-final, and Marvin was at the peak of his powers, and then he just blasted through him. And we ended up, we had some other great bowlers, obviously, but, that really set the tone for that day. So I think just the way they can change the game, we saw what Mitch Johnson did in the Ashes 2013-14, and players still talk about as the most frightening bowling they've ever seen. We saw, one of my great childhood memories was sitting in the car listening to the radio and hearing Dennis Lilly take 3 of the wickets of the great West Indian team, and bowling Viv on the last ball, and had the West Indies 4 for 10 at stumps after they bowled us out. So, just the sights in cricket that you remember, those fast bowlers bowling that express pace, and, it is, I think there's nothing more exciting in the game. That's me. But I think there's a lot of people out there that agree with me as well.
No, obviously, I remember watching Brett Lee bowl in Chennai in 2003, and came out being fascinated. I also went to the hotel where the Australian team was staying, and they managed to shake hands with Glen McGrath. Probably one of the greatest days in my life. Most fascinating.
This is on my wall of fame. That's McGrath there with he made me take these boots around to him. He's sponsored by some company called Pony. They were his 500 wickets at Lords. Yeah. So McGrath he lived for about 20 years, 2 kilometres away from me. But he's moved up to Queensland now. But from my club, and so I'm glad you got to shake hands with him. Great, really down to earth bloke, just country lad, heart of gold. Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. This was when he was coaching at the MRF Space Foundation in Chennai, so he spent a lot of time here. Ran into him in a hotel anyway, and shook hands with him. I was with my father. One of the greatest days of my life.
Awesome.
Yeah. That brings me to my next question. Fast bowling is brutal. Life is brutal when you're bowling, 150 Ks. So what does it mean to be an elite fast bowler? What does it really take?
Yeah, well, it's the most physical aspect of the game of cricket. So obviously cricket's played a lot in the head. And with fast bowlers, you have to use your head a lot as well. And it's, just because you're smart outside of cricket doesn't mean you're going to be a smart fast bowler. And I think that's McGrath's strength. We always used to say, you've got a very simple plan. He goes, no, it's uncomplicated. But he was just and smart enough to just stay where he needed to stay, never get carried away. And you say, if they want to move around the crease or do whatever, I'm still going to bowl the ball I want. And if they're good enough to whack it, good luck to them. But I know most times I'm going to get on top of them. You said, I only have to do a little bit with it, and, I've got them. So, I think the brain, they definitely have to have be smart enough to go, okay, even you see a swing bowler, and as soon as they work out it's not swinging, the great bowlers pull the length back slightly. The not great bowlers will try that for 2 or 3 overs, even though it's not swinging, and all of a sudden the openers are off to a flyer. So I think that's a little example of how smart they have to be. And then working out a batsman, I saw a grouping of Gillespie's balls. I think it was Solara, actually. It was one of the great West Indian left-handers. And he just kept moving it. This is when he was at his prime. Just kept moving it away, moving the same line, same leg, letting it go. Oh, play a miss, letting it go. Finally let one, brought one back in, let it go, off stump, top of off. The patience and the brains and the control to be able to do that. So, you can be a fast bowler and bowl, 150, 155 and spray it everywhere and not get out of first grade, But I think the brain is one thing, the control, but then physically you need to be every physical aspect of that bowling action you need to work on. So I'm really surprised that, we had Shoaib bowl 160, we had Brett Lee bowl 160. There's only a few bowlers that have cracked the 160 mark. I'm very surprised we haven't seen this in the last. I can't even remember. I don't even know who the last one was. It might have been Mitch Starc, actually, and that's probably 10 years ago. So with all the breakthroughs in sports science and they say cricket's progressing, why don't we have more that are bowling at that pace? Why don't we have more that are bowling in the high 150s consistently? And so then you need to work on that physical aspect to bring your pace up. But then you have to have the bowling volume behind you to be able to maintain that pace. I've sat in so many selection meetings where a bowler's name has been brought up and the captain and the coach said, no, we can't pick him. He's bowling pies by the afternoon. We can only bowl him a couple of spells that day, and we need, and then I look back to Mitch Johnson against South Africa. I think it's the early 2010s. No, it could even be earlier than that, but he bowled 50 overs in the Boxing Day test, which is in Melbourne. It starts Boxing Day, 5 days. Then there's a 2-day break in the old days between the Boxing Day and the Sydney test. It's the end of our long summer of test cricket. He bowled 50 overs in the Boxing Day test. Then in the 55th over, he was bowling in the 5th test. So that's 105 overs in 12-day period. Now, if you said that to a physio or a doctor or a sports scientist, they'd be crying at the moment. He bowled Graham Smith with 8 balls to go in the test match with a ball that was in the mid 140s, 146 point something. So he was able to maintain his pace for 105 overs across 2 test matches in 12 days. So, yeah, and that is what you need as a test cricketer or an elite fast bowler. So, and then the longevity, just really looking after your body. Mitch's body was just in an amazing condition. Physically, they've got to be a good runner. They've got to be able to be fast, have a really nice technique, but really well conditioned to be able to use that technique over and over and over again to run into bowl. And then if you're bowling over and you're down at fine leg and you're still puffing, your heart rate's still quite high down at fine leg between overs. And a ball, we used to have, there was a stage where we had 4 slips, a gully, we'd have a point, a cover, fine leg, meaning close. And so I remember a time where Darren Lehman was in close. Jason Gillespie was it was a wide fine leg, almost a deep back of square, and the batsman's hit a on drive on the Adelaide Oval. Now, Adelaide Ovals have very long boundaries. Buffer's in close, he's just practicing to catch it. So Gillespie's had to chase after it. And I measured it was over 90-metre chase in the middle of a bowling spell. So they've got to be, they're not just bowlers, they're cricketers. So they've got to field, they've got to bat. They might have to bat for 2 hours. So they've got to be really well conditioned. And then you're working on their power in the gym, the strength and power in the gym, and the injury prevention stuff. And our bowlers used to go every morning to the pool to have a loosen off and a mobilisation session. Every night after training, after day's play, back in the pool. So it's relentless. As I was talking about with coaching before, it is relentless. and you can't have days off. You can't have, a week where you go, oh no, I won't worry about the recovery stuff, with this and that. You've just got to be relentless with it to stay on the park. So I hope that gives you an idea of that's what you need to be an elite fast bowler anyway.
Say over the last 5 decades, from Dennis Lilly to Glen McGrath, Brett Lee to say Mitchell Starc and Pat Cummins now, how has thinking changed in terms of how they've gone about their training and managing their bodies? What has really changed over the last 5 decades?
Well, it's sports science, strength and conditioning, and traditional cricket. I saw John Dyson, who was my cricket captain at both Sydney Uni and Sutherland when I played there. He was the captain of the club, and I said, so if I tried to play a reverse sweep or a ramp in the nets when you were the captain back in the 80s, what would you have done? He goes, I would have ripped you out of the nets. And I said, yeah. And he goes, but Jock, when I opened the batting first for New South Wales, I was told by one of the selectors I'll never make it as a first-class cricketer as an opener because I play the pull and the cut shot. So cricket, it was very, very traditional for a long period. And then T20 came in and just stirred up the pot. So now, they want power because the baseball hitters have massive power in their hitting. So as a bowler, they've had to respond to that. There's the fields haven't changed size, the ball hasn't changed weight. They don't get to bowl off a shorter pitch, but the batsmen have these big chunks of wood that hit the ball harder now. And I would hate to see Viv Richards with one of those bats. Now, it would have been, imagine Kapil Dev using one of those bats. They already hit the ball hard, and now everyone does. So I think that's a big turning point. But then you see a Pat, what a player. He came in onto the scene as an 18-year-old, having played a handful of first-class cricket and got thrown into a test match. Now, I said at the time, he had a fantastic test, but then he was out of cricket basically for the next 5 years, stress fracture after stress fracture. So I think there's more and more money into research now, so it's changing. Right, instead of trying to limit the bowling they do, we've got to gradually build them up, which is just common sense, really. We've got to do all the injury prevention stuff. There's a lot more. So in up to only a few years ago, they used to think stress fractures in the back healed after 6 weeks. Well, no, everyone's different. And now the good thing is Cricket Australia is like minimum 4 months off bowling if you've got a stress fracture. And then we rescan. And that's what, Errol Alcott, the great Errol Alcott, who lived around the corner from me, was physiotherapist for the Aussie team for 20-something years. And we work with a lot of fast bowlers in this area. And we would never put them back into training or bowling if we weren't 100% sure that their stress fracture had closed over, because they've found that it wasn't a new stress fracture, it was just the old one hadn't quite healed, and they opened it up again by bowling too soon. So the advancements in the medical detection of getting stress fractures before or stress reactions before they turn into stress fractures has really improved, and the education of not only the cricketers, but all the support staff all around the world is now allowing us to, predetermine, what is likely to cause an injury. And then I think all the pooling of this knowledge through tournaments like the IPL, and I spoke to Kieran Moray last time I was in India, and he goes, look, what's happened is we employ now the best strength and conditioners, the best coaches, the best physios, the best players from all around the world, and they all come to this hotbed of IPL, and everyone learns off each other. And he said, and India has the finances to be able to take that knowledge and implement it in all our academies and zones and regions, and so I think that's been a real advancement in everyone knowing what everyone else is doing and all working towards making cricket better. So there's enough information out there and like I said, I'm 100% constantly learning, because I have to stay up to date with everything that's going on and advancements in other sports that we could use, or in cricket, I have to be across that. And as a strength and conditioning physio, high performance coach, whatever, you have to do that. So that's another tip for your youngsters out there is you never know everything. You won't even come close to knowing everything. I've forgotten more than I know now. But you've got to keep learning and progressing, and not, if you never panic and change your program entirely, but you might add little bits in that might advance your program. So don't think you know everything, because no one does. And once you start thinking you know everything, you're a dinosaur.
My next question to you is, where do you stand on nature versus nurture? How much of bowling really fast is natural ability? I mean, are there body structure or anatomical advantages that a fast bowler has that distinguishes him from everyone else?
100%. There's both. So one, you need some talent. I've got a kid who've got this fast bowler at the moment. He's 6'2" at age 15. Beautiful action. His wingspan's bigger than his height. So that's a very big natural advantage. Bumrah is a classic example. So there's, we call them tendon-driven athletes, or, he's got hypermobile joints, and the wrist and his elbow and his knee, able to extend them and hyperextend his wrist and elbow. And Jofra Archer's got the same thing, gives him that natural advantage. But Bumrah's got the brain, and he's got the skills, and he's worked hard. So it's like everything. You can have, I was just telling one of my parents last week about one of my young runners. He's got talent, but, I've got 10-year-old kids that are coming to more training sessions than him and are more committed. Talent won't get you anywhere. It'll get you sort of to a certain level, but then the hard work comes in. And so, one, you've got to have some form of talent, but we can get everyone to bowl faster than they do if they haven't, and no one's got a perfect program. So there's always areas where we can improve. So the nature versus nurture, in the old days, when I was talking about Dennis Lilly, broke his back, and what our thinking is that before that, anyone that got a bad back, it was natural selection, they just stopped bowling. Anyone that got a stress fracture, no one knew how to get them back on the park. So, that was definitely natural selection. But now we know so much more that, we can advance these kids that may not have stayed with cricket, like Pat Cummins. Cricket Australia looked after him. Mitch Johnson had 4 stress fractures before he played his first professional game of cricket. And he was told if he had one more, he'd never bowl again. Cricket Australia backed Pat Cummins, thankfully, but in the old days, he wouldn't have got a contract. Dennis Lilly was on, less than the guy that moved the side screen. That was always the joke, was Dennis Lilly, the fast bowler who brings everyone to the gate, got less than the guy that was taking the money at the gate, working as a gate attendant. So, now we've got that, and they can get in the system where they get looked after. So I think you definitely need some nature, and then you 100% need to nurture that. And if the bowler doesn't have the motivation, we can't give them motivation. If that's the one thing they've got to bring, then we can help them, and they can become their best. And so you see the guys that make the absolute top on there for a period of time, none of them will make it if they're not happy with working hard and doing everything they can to become better. And the absolute, genetic freaks that have so much talent, well, could they be better? Probably. But if they worked harder, we know that they could. And what makes a fast bowler? Well, there's so many different variations. So you had Wasim Akram with the really quick arm action and beautiful wrist. He apparently could bend it back that far. So, and then you've got Brett Lee, who had the really fast run. The faster he ran in, the faster he bowled, and had a nice, powerful action. He had a slightly hyperextensive elbow as well. Beautiful wrist. And then you've got Mitch Johnson, who was just brute force. And then Bumrah, who's just that, elastic ball of sling that just, and he releases so much further down the wicket. Like, I don't want to face him. And his control, and with his wrist, move his wrist. What a great wrist. And so that you've got so many different types, and then also Shoal. He had a massive. I remember sitting with him one day, and he put his arm out, and he just straightened it, and it bent back that far. He goes, I've just got this most hyperextensive elbow, but again, really powerful athlete. Ran in the. We knew that if he was charging in, he was going to bowl fast. If he was just trotting in, he's bowling the 130s. but they all could get faster. They all had periods where they, of non-injury, where they got lots of bowling behind them and really good training, where they increased their pace. And we see it all the time. Like Nathan McAndrew is a classic example with us. He's played for Australia A. He had to leave New South Wales and go to South Australia to get a go. First year of Sheffield Shield cricket, which is equivalent to your Ranji Trophy. He bowled the most overs out of any bowler, including spinners. But when we got him, he bowled about 120 k's an hour. And when he left us and went to professional cricket, he was up in the mid 140s. So we can improve their speed with consistent training over time, doing the right things at the right time. So yeah, there's the nature. You have to have something, and then the nurture. You have to have the enthusiasm, and you have to have the right training and the right bowling.
Can you break down what it means to train for speed? Which are the areas that you are specifically focusing on?
Are you talking about bowling speed or running speed here?
Bowling speed.
Bowling speed. Yeah. So, I remember my train of thought. Yeah. I was asked by the ICL to take a 4-week fitness camp. And I said, are you talking about with as well as cricket? And they said, no, we just have fitness camps. I said, look, bowling, batting is part of your cricket fitness. Throwing, I would never try to increase someone's strength or fitness or running speed without including their cricket skills, because that's part of the equation and a big part. And I gave examples, if you increase someone's running speed by improving their efficiency in running and their technique, but also improving their stride length because you've got them more powerful in the gym and on the training paddock, well, then when they go to run into bowl, their run-up will be out. Also, if we do strength and power work without bowling, all of a sudden, if something tightens up because they haven't been bowling and they've put on 5 kilos, their shins and knees are going to hurt when they start bowling again, but also their action will be slightly out. So you've got to do everything in combination. So like McGrath and Lee, and they wouldn't have more than a week off bowling the whole year. So we wouldn't, because they knew, their speed would drop off. And so we want to build year on upon year. So we want to first get their body functioning well, teach them how to run as we're training them with and conditioning with these areas as well. And then with the bowling, with the gym, we go into a strength phase. If they need to put on size, we do some size. Then we convert that to power, but we're bowling at the same time. And then really specific power. So we would go right out. Say we've got 10 months of touring a year for cricket, the Australian team. Right out. Some of the tours we were lucky because I tour against Zimbabwe. I said, right, we're just going to train through that. That's going to be part of our training. Of course, I'll tape you off for 1 or 2 days before a test match, but not much more, because you might be at 95% of your best, but we're aiming for the Tour de India, or we're aiming for the Ashes or the World Cup or whatever. And so we'll work really hard through those tours. I don't think it would happen again because the tours are so short now. Aiming to peak for certain tournaments or certain test series. And so in conjunction with that, we do our bowling speed work, which is really, so think of concepts like sprint training. We sprint, we have a big rest. If we do the second rep in a speed session and it's slower than the first, it's not speed anymore, it's fitness. So you've got to have high amounts of rest to generate that force production and that max force production. So we do the same concept with bowling, not all the time. We have, I have one session a week with my bowlers where we might do some, low repetitions and then have big rest. So, 3 to 6 balls, and then you go and have 5 minutes rest. So I simulate the game. Or you might just have 2 balls at a time and then have, a couple of minutes rest to get full recovery. And that also might include some resisted work with a heavier ball, which we do really specific exercise for this in the gym as well. And then it might include some tennis ball bowling for some overspeed work. So the best way to improve speed I'll take running because that's, so much research behind this, is doing your normal sprint training, so normal bowling, plus resisted work, heavier balls, stuff we do in the gym, and then assisted work, so downhill running or toes. But what we have to be careful with
is the downhill running and the light ball bowling, etc., is really high risk of injury because you're doing it faster than you normally would. So we only use that when they're really trained individuals. You can't just go and, do some, quick arm speed bowling now with no background in strength and control. And so they're the big areas that we work on. And then you've got to have that aerobic capacity for recovery between balls. So the physiology is it'll give you, if you're aerobically very strong, the adaptations you get through your body will help with recovery of the high intensity stuff between reps, so between balls, then between overs, then between spells, and also between days you will recover quicker. So, exceptionally important in cricket. And then I just mentioned how Jason Gillespie did that 90-metre run, had to get back in position and then bowl the next over. So the recovery between that and also having that, they call it an MAS, maximum aerobic speed running, but let's just call it a solid aerobic capacity. He could then get back into position quite quickly without too much fatigue, and his heart rate would drop back down to normal levels because it's always raised in a bowling spell. And it sort of, if you look at the pattern, it'll go first over, it'll jump up to here, in between the over down a fine leg, it'll drop down a bit. And then each over, the peak heart rate goes up a bit higher and the recovery heart rate between overs still goes up, raises slightly too. So by the time they're finishing a spell, they're working pretty hard. The highest heart rate I've seen in a bowling spell was 199 by Kemar Roach when that's pretty high. He was bowling to Ricky Ponting at the time. So there's a bit of adrenaline going on as well, but he stayed raised for quite a bit. So that's as, aerobically as high as you probably can go. So, it's a really important aspect of training for a cricketer to be able to fast for long periods that is overlooked or not given enough due credit. And there's recovery sessions are in there, for the next day, etc. But that's how do we bowl fast? That's a
could you talk about nutrition? Could you talk about diets and the role that plays in a fast bowler's development?
Yeah, and it's there's a few things here. So for a junior fast bowler, you definitely need enough calcium for your bone strength. You need protein for the growth and development of your muscles and repair. And it's not easy to get all that protein in. So if you're talking about an athlete, or let's talk about our young fast bowlers as athletes. We're wanting you to have about 1.9 to 2 grams of protein per body weight per day. So say this will make it really easy for you. If you're a 100 kilogram bowler, fast bowler, which isn't uncommon, but most kids won't be, then you need 200 grams of protein per day. That is hard to get in. And so that takes effort to structure. So you need to sort of have it every meal within every meal or most meals of the day to get that amount in. And it's really easy now. You can look up on the internet what's in each thing you're eating. Eggs have 6.5 grams of protein in one egg. So you'd think eggs and you go, I had eggs on toast. I had heaps of protein. But if you only had 2 eggs, that's 13 grams on toast. You got a long way to catch up to get to that 200 grams. Or if you're a 70 kilo bowler, you're trying to get 140 grams. It's still not, that's one meal and you're only 13 grams protein down. So, so you got to work out, how do we get that in? You need enough energy in the day to maintain, your glycogen levels. So, your carbohydrates, your breads, your pastas, your naan breads, your rice, when you're playing cricket all day. But also, if you're playing cricket and you're sitting down watching the game all day, you're not burning any calories. You don't need as much. So you might then the next day not have as much because you're in calorie surplus. Or, like I used to get with, if Langer and Hayden were batting and they were fueled up to bat the whole day and they got out, I'd let them get angry and annoyed for a while, and then they'd know we were going to the gym. Like during the game, we're doing a moderate session, which they said made them feel better because I was so fit, made them feel better than if they just sat there all day. But I had to burn those excess calories off because it was, a constant battle to maintain their ideal playing weight. And I know there's big things about, body weight at the moment, and you're not allowed to talk about this and that, but it's a performance issue. So if you're carrying too much body fat that you don't need, then there's more weight going through your front foot as a fast bowler, which is, already up to 10 times your body weight going through that front foot. Well, all of a sudden, if you're carrying 5 kilos of excess body fat, that's a lot more kilograms every ball that you're putting through, 50 kilograms of extra force through that front foot every single ball. That's, that's not going to do you well. Also playing in the heat, that if you've got carrying excess body fat around, that's going to be harder for you to cope with the heat. So you'll fatigue earlier and your core temperature will rise quicker. Also, being agile in the field, it's going to count against you between wickets. Chasing the ball, you're going to be slower. So it's a high impact on cricket performance. So that's why I mentioned that. And I'm constantly aware of the changing face of, particularly in our country, and all Olympic countries as well. The IOC has just put out an edict that we shouldn't test skin folds of under 18s, and that anyone over 18, we had to seek their permission. But I think it's very much a performance issue that we can't be scared about talking about. The way we word it is the key. Anyway, so that, and then, of course, hydration. I saw a great piece. The last time I was in India was maybe 2017. It was for IPL, and I saw a thing that had the Indian dietitian on TV, and he was going through the drop in cognitive performance and physical performance with, reduction in, even at 2% of your body weight in fluids. So if you're 100 kilos and you drop 2 kilos in a day's play, he said, and then you drop a catch, he cannot say whether it wasn't because you were dehydrated that happened. If it's a catch, you should, that could well be the reason. So the in depth that they're looking into it now, it's fantastic. And having that on TV, and, I pick up these things, I remember these things, but young fast bowlers should be they should be a sponge with this stuff.
Could you talk about workload management, especially given that so much cricket is being played and, the players are traveling all the time. Could you talk about workload management, things like rest, managing different formats, managing off-season training, that sort of thing?
Yeah, 100%. And this is a changing face of cricket. I was very lucky. When I started with the Australian team, we had full control the whole year round. And they played for basically one team. They might play for the States a bit, but we sort of had control. It was just the physio, myself, and the head coach to start with. And so that was easy. Now I think it would be very hard. Players are with multiple teams, multiple different formats. They've got their national, strengthening initiatives and coaches and whatnot. And which, interesting, I was just talking to the South African strengthening, Runish, and he's with the Proteas now, and he did my course that I developed. And he was saying, we were talking about the issues with, having that, and how he had to try and talk with the support staff of those teams. And I say it's very difficult now because, I know I talk to a lot of the international players, still work with some of them, and they tell me, when you're with a franchise team, unless you're really motivated, they let you do whatever training you want to. They just want you to win games. So whatever you need to do to win games. But those same players might have a test series straight after. And a classic example was in 2008. I'm going back away here. It was one of the first IPLs, and Australia was touring India straight after the IPL. It was the first or second one, I can't remember. But Doug Bollinger and Mike Hussey were with Chennai, I think. And they chose to play more games with Chennai than to go and play the warm-up games with Cricket Australia, which was 3-day games or 4-day games, I can't remember. Anyway, Doug then went and played in the first test, well and truly underdone because he'd just been bowling 4 overs in matches. And I know he hadn't been doing the work because a couple of players had told me. And he broke down in that first test. Now, everyone says that's unlucky. No, that wasn't unlucky. He wasn't prepared. And it was early days, so no one really had control over who was meant to be looking after what. So I think it's really going to come down to players have got to take the onus on themselves. You can't go from bowling 4 overs in a game and just bowling a bit of training to then jump into a test match. That's not going to work. And we talk about workload management. It's gone full circle. It was, you've got to bowl as much as you can to get better. Then it was, no, you're only allowed to bowl 30 balls in the nets. And mine was always, well, you only bowl 30 balls. How are you going to bowl 25 overs in a day at good pace? And now, thankfully, it's come back to a common sense approach and research where we gradually build the loads. We have offload weeks. Basic periodization, which is in every sport, every physiological sport. So it's, as I say, takes cricket a while to catch on to things because it's slow moving and traditional. And so what they need to do is they've got all these workload management systems that check this, but we need to have, and it is gradually built to be able to match the demands of matches, obviously. But sometimes you have to, like Mitch did, you have to bowl 50 overs in one test, 55 in the next test. Well, that's a massive what's called spike in workload. So, like I say, the common sense is, as a runner, you would only gradually increase mileage and intensity. Then you have an offload, gradually increase more. You wouldn't go from running 40 Ks a week to 120 Ks a week and think nothing's going to go wrong, right? It's a really simple concept. That's what we do in cricket. But then when we get a game, once you hit battle, like runners are easy because I know he's going to run 42.2 Ks that day, so I know what to do the weeks after because that's his race. With cricket, it's an unknown. You could bowl 5 overs, you could bowl 25 overs in a day. And so we go after those games, we then go, okay, well, how do we need to adjust their workload after this? So, Mitch has just bowled 105 overs. We've got to drop his workload right down, not stop it, but drop it right down over the next few weeks, or we're going to have an injured bowler. So it's just preempting that, and it's not a perfect science, and it's more an art. And then you've got all these other stakeholders of, well, he might bowl 105 overs, but then he's got to fly to India and play in the IPL. And his owners don't care what he's bowled. They need the games won, or, the coach gets kicked out of his job, or, so I think the players have to take a lot of onus on, okay, if I'm playing a T20 comp and I've got 4-day cricket or 5-day cricket coming up, I need to keep my levels of volume and intensity up through this period whilst still being fresh for games. But, there's plenty of time between games. They can't just use it as a party, or if they want to survive and bowl fast for their countries, which some players are choosing not to do, which is really sad to me. International cricket is still, I think, just what the fans love, and where I think the priority should be, but it comes down to money. Young kids coming through, they don't care if, they see these guys in beautiful clothing and all the, trimmings and the packed stadiums and, getting millions. So it's very hard. So it's a changing face. I don't have all the answers, but I think the national guys need to work with the franchise guys, and the players need to buy into it. And I would even go and say, look, if you've got 5 fast bowlers over in the Indian Premier League, send your high performance guy over there so he can work with them and do some sessions with them and try and make sure they're on track. That would be, if you wanted to win, that's what I was saying before. Do whatever you can to give them the best opportunity, your country or your team or your athlete, to do the best possible, their best possible level they can do, and your best possible chance of winning. In the international bodies, they earn enough money, they can afford that. It's not expensive, but the difference it would make, I think, would be great. So, I know a lot of the players now will take their personal guys with them and pay, like Matt Hayden did with me leading into IPL when he'd stopped international cricket. I'd go up and live with him for 8 weeks and put him through his paces to get him right for IPL. So I think that's the way it might go as well.
What are your thoughts on data science and its use in workload management for fast bowlers these days, monitoring or these biometrics?
Yeah, it exploded early on, and I've probably used GPS more than anyone because I've took it to Channel 9. I also took it to the ICL to get it live on TV. So, you can see heart rate data, you can see, the running speeds, volume of running, the distances they covered. And so, but I always thought it was the most overused bit of technology. And I'll give you an example. Mornay Morkel did 30 Ks in one day on the MCG, 30 Ks of distance. At least 15 of that was either jogging, striding, or sprinting. And I can't remember who the guy was, but his strength and conditioner at the time, he goes, can you not tell him that? Because, and I said, yeah, he's probably done that. Loads of bowlers have probably done that at the MCG previously, and they're still fine. They still survive. We do recovery. They get food, and they play the next day because they're well conditioned. But you start telling the athletes that they've done, more than they normally would do, and all of a sudden it plays in their head. So I think, and there was a load of strength and conditioners out there for a while that couldn't do anything until they'd seen all the data. But mate, if you scored 100, I know you've worked hard. If you scored 100 in as Matt Hayden did in 50 degrees heat, mate, I know you're going to be tired. Like, I don't have to look at data to tell me that. So I think it's got its great uses. I love the workload, being able to see their bowling for the last few years. So to get a player that in Australia, we have Premier Cricket, and it's Saturday cricket. You play a 2-day game. Sometimes it's Saturday, Sunday, but then everyone works during the week or goes to school or whatever. And so they get picked from that into 4-day cricket. So to go from bowling 1 day a week to all of a sudden you've got to play 4-day cricket, that's a massive jump. And that's where Paddy Cummins came undone early on when he was 18. So I say to great cricketers, I want not just 1 year, I want 2 years to build you up to be able to bowl 4-day cricket, average 20 overs in each inning. So it's 40 overs over 3 or 4 days, probably bowling each day or at least 3 days out of that, and maintain your pace. I need probably 2 years to get you to that level. So we've got to gradually build you up, and at least a year, because the stress it puts on your bones and joints, and to get that physical strength and condition to bowl at that level, we need to just gradually build your loads up. And you gradually build, like, as I say, like periodization, which again is another 10 episodes. We go, and the module in my fast bowling course, periodization model is 1 week, and it's probably 20 hours of study. We gradually increase each week, and then we have an offload, and the offload week is allow the adaptations, but also avoid illness and injury, and freshen them up mentally. So, as I say, it's been around in, sport since the 50s, I'm talking about 1950s, but it's only come into cricket in the last 20 years, which is amazing to me. So yeah, that's the technology is a good add-on, but it shouldn't take away from the coach's eye. And, again, common sense here is very, very important. But yeah, the technology, I've got to stay abreast of it. And Mitch and I developed an app called the BowlFit app. And because we had so much interest from India, particularly and even young fast bowlers in Australia wanting programs and how do you do this? We can't go everywhere, and a lot of people can't afford much. So we've created an app, and it not only keeps tabs of your workload, but it gives you all the programs, how much you need to bowl per week, or what intensity. Then you add in your match day bowling loads, and it adjusts, what running sessions you do, what off leg sessions you need to do, what's your gym program this week. If you miss a week because you were sick, the program adjusts. So it was the first of the AI ones. I think we launched it maybe 2016 or 17 in India. That was the last time I was over in India. Yeah. And so, we love this technology, but it can be overused, and there's reams and reams of data that the sports scientists are collecting, but they're not fast enough to give you the feedback in a timely manner. And there's just so much of it. How much of it is useful, and who's using all of it? Because I've never seen anyone use all of it yet. But having said that, there was 3 research articles when I was at uni on cricket, and now there's a whole bunch more data, and we know so much more now, which is fantastic. And the other ones is I love there's a couple of virtual wickets you can do, and also some virtual biometrics, which I think is only going to get better, particularly from, assessing bowlers' actions and also running technique. And, if you can't, there's one tennis player out there, I can't remember who it is, but he's basically copied all the tennis shots of his favourite tennis players. So if you like an Agassi double-handed backhand, he's copied that exact technique. And in baseball, they're doing the same. A curveball, they find the best exponent of a curveball, they break it all down, his wrist's here, his timing's here, and then they go and copy it and then refine it, and all of a sudden they've got a magnificent curveball. So that's the way it's going, and I'm glad I don't play under that scrutiny now, because everyone will work out your game pretty quickly. But who knows where sport's going to go? But it's advancing fastly.
Yeah, I was really interested by your work in education as well. So online education, could you talk about that a bit?
Yeah, sure. It's really interesting. I went to Cricket Australia when I worked for Channel 9, because I was always on tour around Australia. And I said, look, I want to develop some strength and conditioning courses for cricket, level 1, level 2, level 3, and particularly with a fast bowling emphasis on the first one, and do this, online program that, and that, talking about the app. And my mate, Matt Betsy, who was a player of mine when I worked at New South Wales Cricket, he was head of education. He said, look, let me check it out. And he said, the feedback was you're going over the top. And he goes, but my advice to you is go and develop the programs and then come back to us. So what I did, it took me a while, I'm going to say. The app we did first, and that was so much work, and it was more the technology side of it, the formulas and the programs and the videos. And, Mitch and I could do in our sleep, and that's what we did. But then, how do you take that to an app? How do you create the flow and it was new, early days in sort of that sort of app development, the formulas for the AI as well, when you miss days, when you when you bowl, a lot, what happens the next week, and etc. So we did the app first, and it's a really good resource. But none of us have really pushed the selling of it. It's just good to have in the background, and it ranges from we've probably got 1,000 people on it doing it. But then during COVID, I've gone, right, I've got to get stuck into this course, and I didn't know how I was going to put it together. And I started, I'll do a level 1, and then I just went, you know what, I'm just going to throw everything at it. So give as much as I can in this course. It's a 10-week course. It took us probably 2 years to put together. Just been approved by one of the universities here in Australia. I'm not going to say which one until it's launched, but I'll give you a hint. They've also got a campus in Dubai, and they're opening one in India. And Gilly might be involved there. And they've just approved it through the sports science department as an elective, a subject, 6 credit point subject, and so that should go in the curriculum next year. But I've also had a few international cricketers do it, but as I said, Runishan Moodley, South African Proteas men's strength and conditioner, who was just at the World Cup, he just has completed the course. I was flying colours, might add, and he rang me. He said, "Mate, can I do your course?" I said, "It wasn't really set up for international cricket coaches, but if you've got something out of it, that's if you want to do it, for sure." And he said it was really helpful. And I'm speaking to the head of high performance next week. And they want their whole system to go through this course. So, look, I just got to the stage where, look, I'm getting older. Before I get too old, no one wants to listen to what I got to say. I want to get because I got so much out of Darryl Foster's book, who was, the Western Australian coach for many years, that won multiple Sheffield Shields, but also he was the one that helped DK Lilly come back. I got a massive amount out of his book, out of the program that Dennis did. And I'm so glad they documented what he did in his recovery. I learned so much from that. And so I thought, well, there might be young kids out there, might be someone like a Rajamani. I'm so thrilled to see how well Roger Money's going, strengthening, and he's just kicked so many goals. He said the other day, I said, mate, I love what you're doing. He goes, oh, it's because of you. I said, no, mate, you're far better than I ever was. You're going awesome. So, if that can help, kids like that go through and do great things for our fast bowlers or cricketers, that's fantastic. And I don't have time to lecture. I'll do the odd thing here and there, but I wanted to get something that anyone could do at any time, anywhere in the world. And so, I had two of my great runners here helping me. They worked for me, and they're, both our ATAR or our HSC final year of school equivalent is out of 100. And one of them, this will give you an indication, these were two of my smartest girls. One got 98.6 out of 100 and the other one was high 90s. So very smart. They know sport really well, and they helped me put it together. And we watched lots of webinars on how to put courses together and where things go. And so I had all the knowledge, but I didn't know how to set out the course, and it's come out really well. And we've had several people through it. Brad Hogg's done it. He was one of my beta testers, and even the head of Microsoft Australia was a guy I used to play cricket with at school, all the way through school. Steve Worrell's a fast bowler, and I got him to look at it, and he thought it was great. So, it just goes through every physical aspect of cricket, and how to coach that and why things work. So, through the running speed, through the bowling speed and condition, through aerobic conditioning, all the resistance training, recovery techniques, technologies in cricket, fitness testing, and etc. So it just goes through all of that, and now that's been approved. Our next phase is going to all those modules, and they all take a week. Is now to expand on the aerobic training and do a full course on that, and a full course on bowling workloads and bowling workload management, in how to bowl faster, all that sort of stuff, and then a running speed one, and then definitely a gym. So we'll go through and do a course for each of them, and the university is very keen, and South African cricket's very keen to do the advancement ones as well. So yeah, it's taken off. As I haven't really advertised it much, or just threw it around to a few people, and we've done a couple of ads, but we'll get more and more into that, and it still allows me to coach full time, which I absolutely love. And Nathan Ellis has come through our system, and now he's a regular member of the Australian team, and again had to chase his dream in a different state. So I still get a massive buzz out of working with these guys, and working with kids and taking them all the way through to elite senior athletes. It's still what gets me up in the morning and keeps me awake at night. So that's probably the education piece, and you don't have to do it through university. You can just go to our website, jockathletic.com, and click on it, and you can enter it at any stage and get to it. And then in your final exam, you present to me and via Zoom. And then if you're lucky, if I've got extra time, I hang around and have a chat with you for half an hour. And but also I've got one of the other South Africans that done it. He's a professional cricketer, and I've helped him with his programs, with his work. He's already implementing these programs with his cricket academy, and he's still playing professional cricket. So, and he's used it on his own cricket, and he's currently just played some first class cricket last night in Ireland, actually. So
I was reading about your work on education a couple of nights back, and it all seemed really interesting. It all seemed really exciting. So thank you so much for that. As a final question, what would you say is your favorite Australian cricketing moment?
That is a tough question. From someone that will watch cricket in at any time, anywhere, like the cricket will come on, it'll be Bangladesh playing India or Pakistan playing Holland, and it'll come on the TV, and my wife will go, "You're joking. You're not going to watch this." Say, "Oh, no, I have to, because this." So I should be Indian because I love cricket as much as Indians do, and I'm really passionate, obviously, about Australian cricket. So I'd have to say, there's two probably that really stand out. I mean, all the Ashes wins that I was involved with were fantastic. And I remember we'd won the Ashes for a long time. It might have been 9 series in a row. And so I didn't really realize how big it was until I was in the first one in 2001. And I was sitting in the dressing room and we were about to win the test. I can't remember where it was. It might have been Old Trafford. No, it wasn't. I can't remember. Anyway, and Justin Langer's out on the balcony. He goes, Campbell, get out here. And he got me, put his arm around me, and I was stuck in between him and Brett Lee. And we've hit the winning runs and everyone's up like this. And I'm in this middle of this photo that goes on the back page of and all my mates are going, oh, what did you get that photo for? But it was just to win that and see how big it was for the players and how much it meant to them. That was a great moment, and that's one of them. But the two that really stand out because how much preparation went into it was winning the World Cup final in 2003, and that was like a 2-year plan. And having Brett bowl 160 k's an hour in that tournament, 5 of his fastest spells of all time, and only him and I really knew how much we'd been through the peak at that time. It was fantastic, and just knowing all those players so well, and but also the win in India. We've only won once in India since 1968 in a Test series, and so that one in 2004, the amount of work and planning and effort, and all the boys just bought into it. They didn't lose their hunger for it the whole tour. There were no ups and downs periods. They just, even our reserve players, how much they were training and how hard they were working just in case they got to go was, that was a phenomenal tour for us, and just one that'll really stick in the memory. But they're all, I could name, working with that Australian team, first the one captained by Steve Waugh, and I'd known Steve for so long and trained him through New South Wales and privately for so many years, and to get some great wins, to get I think the chalice, that the number one Test nation chalice, only came out sort of a year or two into us working there, and knowing that we had that chalice for the whole 5 years I was there, except part for, I think it was 7 or 9 weeks. South Africa took us off office for only that very short period. And then with Ricky, with so many great moments. But anyway, those two really stick out, and that moment in the Ashes when the boys called me out in the dressing room, it really made me feel part of really welcome as part of the team, and it's just fantastic memories.
There's actually one other question that I want to ask you, and this is not really discussed much. In fact, I wanted to ask this as part of the discussion on workload management. Mental health for cricketers, spending so much time away from family, all the stress of competition. Could you talk about the mental health challenge and any advice that you have for cricketers on how to manage that better?
Yeah, it is a really interesting one. And I think we were lucky. Again, we were lucky. We had a big team, big dynamic. And when you're on cricket tour, it's breakfast, lunch and dinner with the team. It's every social event, every high and low. And there's so many ups and downs on a cricket tour, performance-wise, and people are playing for their lives. It's 3 bad performances and you could be out of the team, which in those days meant no contract. The contracts in state cricket weren't massive at the time, and so they're walking a tightrope, and it is a lot of stress. And our team sort of, I think, because we're winning so much, maybe. And I always ask the question: did we win so much because we all got on really well, or we all got on really well because we won so much? Who knows? It's probably a bit of both. But I was happy it did. But yeah, I think just having your confidence on tour, and all the players sort of would, have their someone in the coaching staff or a senior player. We had lots of great senior players that were really good with younger members, but really good with each other as well. Matthew Hayter was brilliant with some of the players, and our captains, and Gilly was fantastic. And even Warney took players under his wing and really helped them, like young Michael Clark, for example. So I think that have someone that you can talk to on tour. Of course, you've got your family, but just and when you're with a team, it's a team. Like, they're your teammates. They're not, a good team shares things, picks you up if you're down, helps you, and you're not going to like everyone in your team. But you admire what they bring to your team, and you're all there for that one common goal. So, get to know one of your support staff, your coaches. Don't be afraid to speak up, because everyone's there to help you. The support staff, they're called support staff for a reason. They're not part of the show. They're there to help you to be your best. And I think most teams now have a sports psychologist along for the ride. But our guys use the physio. Are always very experienced, and some of them use me, the coach, the manager, but the senior players in our area were very good. So, and I know it's different in India and Pakistan. We all come from different regions, but the good leaders, and I love Raul Dravid and Rohit. I loved I loved Raul when we used to play against him. He was just a really good guy, so passionate. We're always up for a chat, and I'm sure he would have been a fantastic coach for that type of thing as well. Yeah. Sorry to see him go from the Indian team, because I thought he was brilliant. I'm sure got him to do a great job, and Ravi Shastri did a great job. But Raul was one of my favourite, even though he batted the whole day against us. That was not one of my favourite moments, let me tell you. But I look back now, what a team! Like, both teams, what magnificent teams. I remember in that tour seeing Gillespie and McGrath bowling to Tendulkar and Dravid one morning. I think it was in Mumbai, and I think we got a wicket. There wasn't a lot of runs scored, and Dizzy came up and goes, I could not have bowled any better than that. And there's a picture of Sachin with the ball there, and he's like 2 foot off the ground, and it's going past here. And it was just 4 great players going at each other for a long period of time, no one giving an inch. And, I look back at that and just think, what an amazing session. Not much happened, but so much happened. And it was just them all at their peak of their powers. So, yeah, I think that's, having find someone within your team that you feel comfortable discussing, and they can help you solve a lot of problems. I think that's a big key.
It's always a pleasure to talk about cricket and relive old days. So, yeah, as you can probably tell, I can talk for Australia. I should have a degree in talking. But I really enjoy the podcast, because you never look back at...
Thank you so much for that, Jock. It's been incredible speaking with you. Thank you so much for your time.